And one other thing is the Wonder Years. Do you remember the Wonder
Oh
Years?
yeah,
I think.
you described going back to that.
Yeah. So
Fred Savage.
Fred Savage, and did you know the voice of the narrator? You know who that is?
I thought it was Opie.
No, it was remember Home Alone?
Yeah.
Not Joe Pesci.
Oh, the other guy.
Yeah, Marv.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That guy is the voice of the narrator.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Remember when he got electrocuted so hard he turned into a skeleton for like 15 frames?
In real life, yes.
Yeah, I remember that. That happened.
So we so we got that there's a new Wonder Years 2 I mentioned, which is it just launched. In this case, it's Don Cheadle narrating over a black family around the same time period in the 60s in Alabama, I believe. Although they never quite tell you where the original takes place. So it, at first I heard it was the other side of town, and then I heard like, oh no, it's specifically here. And I'm like, I don't know, they may or may not play it in, but it's definitely around the same or similar time period. And it was interesting because I watched that, and then I just started watching the old show. And I mentioned before that the Wonder Years, the old show, used to be my favorite thing on television. Like
Really?
as a kid, it was my favorite thing. It was my favorite show. I was obsessed. I loved it so much. Yeah. It's like the feeling of like, oh yay, that I get hearing the intro, of it, and then the clip, like everything about that, I would just fucking always tune in. It was really just, struggles of a fucking dumb kid in the suburbs, and Winnie Cooper, So I wanted to.
I think I saw 2 episodes of Wonder Years and was like, this shit is fucking lame, and then never watched it again.
I just, as a kid, I fucking loved it, man. And eventually, I don't know, reboot came along and it was what it was, life. But yeah, that shit dropped, and it came out in 1988. I'm born in 85, and it just, dumb kid trying to figure it out, and older brother that beats on his ass, and like, I don't know, do we like each other with this girl? Do we not? What do we? I don't know. We're kids. All of that stuff. It was something I was entertained by and resonated with. So, always wanted to go back to it, but I never knew on like, would this hold up or would it just be corny as shit? And the answer is absolutely both, right? It is corny as shit, but I still feel great watching it. And not just for nostalgia purposes, because there's a bunch of episodes I don't remember. There's a bunch of stuff that happens, especially later on, that I don't remember. Like the later seasons are a blur in my head. But I'm going back to it and enjoying it like thoroughly and like for what it is, So
well, I mean, the 60s in general were cringe, so there's no way around it.
Sure.
Like, it's gonna be cringe.
And for anyone who's unfamiliar, I guess the comparison is kind of like, Malcolm in the Middle, which is also super dated as a reference right now. Like,
boy,
this
is it. Oh.
So Malcolm in the Middle is parodying like the Wonder Years, except it's being like punk rock and alternative about it, But the idea was kind of the same, with Wonder Years being the more sincere version of that kind of story from the 80s, right? Watching the new one and then going back to the old one was a really interesting whiplash, because I could directly compare the two. And I can say that the story of the original has always been like the smallest scale dumb hijinks ever for kids at an age where nothing you do matters. And there's always going to be a point in the episode where the narrator goes, and that's the day that I learned that some things never go back to the way they were. Oh. And whether it's about like the brother or the best friend who is not Marilyn Manson, despite that weird rumor, and all that other stuff, and or Winnie Cooper. It is it's one of those shows where it's like you learned for the first time that da 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 da, and so you have small scale shit, and then while that's happening, for the most part, the show also has like, and the era of the times, the '60s, is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And civil rights things happen, and there's things relating to like like Red Scare and all kinds of, and the hippie movements, and
all that shit,
all the shit that was going down in America in the 60s and into the 70s. So you have all of that as the backdrop, but it kind of peeks in, and then it gets filtered into the lens of a child who doesn't get it, you know? So that's sort of what the old show has been about. The new show also is doing that, and it's focusing on, mainly, of course, it's a black family at the time, so the civil rights part of it, and, the segregation of it, and, remnants of, like, Jim Crow things and all that, while the kids are having their basic little going to high school life and trying to get a kiss for the first time and doing all that stuff.
All that stupid hijinks shit.
Yeah. The main thing I'd say though is that like I've only one episode came out so far. Well, I think two as of today, but so at the time only the pilot launched. And I would say that it gets the culture and the times and the events of the era right, and it in the same way that the original show does, because first episode of the original show, kid on the street goes off to Vietnam, never comes back,
Yeah.
So
because he's dead.
Yeah, and that's that. So like in the same way, in this case, first episode of the show, like hijinks is going on, stuff's going down, and then none of that matters. It's all interrupted because Dr. King just got shot, right?
Yeah.
So it's doing that kind of thing, and that is present and executed as fine as you'd imagine. The part though where you're going into the lens and the kids' lives and how shit doesn't matter and the dicking around and whatever, all that stuff, I feel like it's lacking in the new one, and what I don't know if it's based on the actors and their delivery or if it's just the shit that's happening to them, but it feels as if they're being strung along by those events and they're not quite establishing just their own dumb bullshit child world yet. Whereas in the original, you kind of felt like almost there was two worlds, and then the real world would like interrupt the childhood, So we'll see how it shapes up. And I mean, maybe there's a statement to say that like, when you're growing up black in this type of situation, you never really do get to escape it, and there is that. But I'm hoping that you can like deliver a similar feeling of like, the kids don't know or care that much about what's going on until it crashes into them, and then they're forced to kind of grow up in these moments.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what, I mean, I haven't watched Wonder Years for shit, but that, I remember it was like painted almost very idealistically. If you're describing it taking place in an era of like social upheaval and like the MLK assassination, all that, like I can't help but think that you're correct in saying that like you can't just have your idealized stupid low stakes kid's life with all this shit going on.
Yeah. And the original Wonder Years pilot, like around like I think it's like the end of the first or the second episode, the narrator is like there's some people who look down on the suburbs and think of it as just a series of grids with like no soul in them or whatever, but there's people who live in those grids and they have stories and lives that matter, and it's kind of like saying like, we're in this fucking box, but there's people here that matter, and we're gonna like look into those things and talk about them in a way. And I guess like in the new one, we'll have to see where it goes, right? But like I feel like something will be lost if it focuses just on the times and like not as much on that kid's world as I'm describing it, So I'm hoping that we do get a bit more of that, because it's a different style of family, but same style of like dorky kid try to figure it out, you know, in both cases. But either way, I then went on to watch like a bunch of the original, and man, yeah, I love that show. And the intro and outro of Get By With a Little Help from My Friends is just one of the coziest things ever. And yeah, I don't know. I'm glad to say that it does hold up, in my opinion. It does kind of hold up as long as you're aware of that 1988ness of it, and it's still okay. It's still okay.
I don't know, man. I remember being like a 6-year-old and thinking that it didn't hold up then.
Well, you're tuning into some cheese, but that's what you're tuning into, you know? Yeah. I like it.